that time, we put forward to the board the criteria that Trustee Maher has said. My goal was 2 terms. I was going to then nominate replacement. There wasn't an objection at that time, and we did not take a vote. So this year, we do have a JP&L committee, and so the JP&L chair, myself, and the clerk got together and discussed, and then got advice from our attorney on what is the current law. I mean, because we had some questions that came from trustees through email and through in person, and we wanted to stay very consistent. It's not personal. This is very. I want it to be consistent, and if the board then decides in the future, for a future agenda item, to change that, 2 terms, then we would do so. But because no action had been taken by the board, I remained very consistent with the criteria that was used from the first year so that the public would understand that it's not personal. And so we certainly, as a board, can take a vote in the future, and I believe we put it on a future agenda, is that correct? Or no, we didn't yet. We did not. So anyways, but today in front of you are appointments for if people are being replaced, if they have served 2 full terms, they are being reappointed if they've served only 1 term. And that is the consistent criteria that I have used since I got elected. So for that, if there's any other questions on that, we would like to entertain them. Trustee Mento.
I would like to just make a comment. It appears that Trustee Maher is asking that we review the appointment process that was used this year. You're saying we should have a review of the policy.
Yeah, that's not my, I got.
Right.
Which is what Trustee Bachhorst asked at the May 6th meeting, and which she did not make a motion, but you made a motion, and there was no second to review that process. So now, once again, at this meeting on June 3rd, we are now again discussing reviewing the process.
Which we can do, but in future agenda items.
I'm going to do it under future consideration.
Yeah, that's fine. Unless you want to make a motion.
I don't want to make a
Okay.
motion.
Okay.
Were you done speaking? Because
No, I
you called the point of
Okay.
order and interrupted you.
Trustee Maher.
Yeah, we have the
We'll probably repair
list of proposed nominees to these positions. In reviewing the list, there are 2 of these persons. Gene Weber on the bid board that's being proposed by the village president has not submitted an application. Also, Dusty Lorino has not submitted an application. I've heard consistency, transparency, the same process. We went to the bid and said, you got to go through your applicants have to go through the village applicant process. These folks have not put in an application. They also don't match. The bid board provided this board a May 16th memo with their recommendations. And one of the recommendations was the manager of Northwoods. He was on the list at the last meeting I missed, May 20th, and I understand David Price was not able to get appointed to CBA, so now he's bumped the manager of Northwoods off the bid appointments. And he's managing one of the second largest businesses. It's also IT and it's sector I'm sure we'd like to encourage in this village. And
Are you asking me a question?
I would propose that David Price propose, well, I'm not, I just,
Okay.
it would, my motion would be to approve the slate as presented except with removing David Price, Dusty Lorino, and Gene Weber since.
Is that your motion? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Is there a second? Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Trustee McKay.
I think that was well said. Good summary, Trustee Maher. I realize that as president, we've been now lectured by it feels like we were lectured by the attorney, the village attorney, on your behalf to defend your ability to.
The JP&L chair also requested that we get some advice.
So then perhaps both of you. I think in the nature of at-large government, it's true that you can do all these things, but if you need to remind us through legal counsel that you are able to do all these things, that perhaps that isn't in the spirit in which we want to work. I will say that last year I supported the process that you put forth because it was at a time where you had made a statement of working together, and you had reached out to each of us and talked about what our goals were for the village board. And so I really felt like there was a possibility of working together and working through differences that had come up during election cycles and on previous boards. That has since not been, I think we made some progress, but I think it's deteriorated. And seeing these appointments this year, it feels like it contradicts what we have tried to work towards. And to the point of, in some cases, it seems like it gives the impression of political favoritism. The people who are not being reappointed or who are being replaced tend to speak out against certain things that the board is moving towards. And I'm not saying that that is intentional. I'm saying that it gives the appearance of that, and I would caution the board from going further in that direction.
Thank you. I would like to respond, but I would like to hear from the.
Oh, I forgot one thing.
Okay.
I also believe the bid recommended Rick Fessenbacher, the manager of the Brat House, who is a very active bid participant.
No, different person.
Andrew Fronak said.
Oh, apologies.
Thank you for that clarification. I would like to hear from our administrators, because they were part of the process, specifically our clerk, and what her recommendation is in terms of consistency of process.
I think that's
I
point
asked,
of order.
am I allowed to ask that point of order? Am I allowed to ask that question of the administration?
You staff, you're asking staff?
Yes.
So we've traditionally always referred questions to staff for remain to the.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Buck.
So part of the process is we do need consistency. I would agree it does need to be, we are gonna, relook at this resolution. It does need to be on a future agenda item. But we do need consistency in how it goes through my office and how the recommendations are done. So the process has probably not been very well put together in the past. So from my point, we do need to come up with some sort of process. I do think at our JP&L committee meeting, it was very productive. We did review and discuss how the board moving forward. Was the full board present at that time? No, they weren't, so unfortunately we couldn't hear everyone's perspective on that.
And your time committees, correct.
And, there are a slew of applications at this point to go through, so that's part of the process of, how long do you hold on to these and relook at them. It also is a struggle too when people are appointed midterm. Do you consider that a term if they're only appointed 6 months? Do you consider that a full term? Do you count people as half terms? So those discussions aren't fully valid. Yeah,
In the meantime.
in the meantime, it is something, to look at. The tough thing is there's 125 applications still waiting from people who want to serve on these committees. So I do understand that people do want to stay on them, but there's a lot of people waiting to be on committees that also want to serve. So there's a strike in the balance, and it's very hard in my office to meet all those expectations in that balance at the same time. So it's not as easy and wrapped up in a pretty little bow as one thinks.
Thank you, Rebecca.
We need to document the process and we need to move on.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm saying that for purposes of tonight's discussion as well. It's 9:30. I understand that this is a passionate topic of many members of the board. But I'm asking for you guys to move on. We know the business that we need to get into.
Thank you. And so just to comment, the floor.
I'm going to call the question.
Did you call the question? I
I'm calling
apologize.
the question on his motion.
Okay, yep, so all those in favor of, wait, there's been a motion to call the question, there's no further discussion before we take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Any
Call to question, it's about call to question.
call to question, it does not mean you can vote no. That is the law, okay? Attorney Bear is at the law point of order.
Right now, you're deciding whether to call the question, you're not voting on the underlying motion at all.
So is that the
You're not
law?
making a decision, so you can support calling the question and then vote against the motion.
I have
It's
nothing,
not inconsistent.
is that what I'm supposed to do? What am I supposed to do when someone calls a question?
Ask for a vote on calling the question and debate and ask for a vote on calling the question.
Okay, so that's our attorney's advice, that's the law. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion fails.
What
Okay,
was the fail, what was the motion? How
to
many?
call the question.
No, I understand, how many no's?
1 to 6. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we can entertain further discussion. I would like to, before we speak to the residents, we, as procedure has always dictated, the board members all speak, and then once we're done, we ask the residents to come forward. On the three that were pulled, I would like to address qualifications, just so that the board, before they vote, understands their qualifications. The CDA nomination was a realtor who I've been since, there's not a realtor currently on our Community Development Authority. We have an RFP out, Rebecca? Is it out? Not yet, to be discussed to finalize the RFP, but we are doing a housing and marketing, a housing study for the first time. We're embarking on a housing study for the village of Shorewood. It was discussed with the JP&L chair as well as manager that realtor would make sense, and that is why, for the CDA, that is why I'm nominating a realtor, because that would make, that would round out and help to assist with the market study and giving some input, and we think that would be a good fit. So that is why I reached out, which is according to our village attorney, I have the right to do that, to recruit if the applicants, if we're looking for a realtor, there's no applicants that were of that category. So that is the reason that that is on the agenda today. And then the other two, we have been in discussions with the bid director, and even in the last one, there's another agenda item on here that we'll discuss later on in the meeting if it doesn't go past 10:30. And one of the things the bid is concentrating on is the Oakland Avenue food and beverage industry is it's a hot market, and it seems to be what is sustaining many national business districts as retail is leaving. And so the current bid board, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Director Lang, has one current food and beverage, is that correct?
Correct.
Out of 14. And so talking over with the JP&L chair, and from getting some communications back and forth on a future agenda item for tonight, it appears that if that's the intent, it would make sense that we bolster that representation. And so David Price had applied. He does have an application in to be on the bid board for Three Lions. I'm supporting his nomination, which is in front of you, as well as Drafting Vessel, as well as Jean Weber, who is of the North Shore Boulangerie, who I reached out to, who accepted the nomination. And so those are the three, so that would bring the bid board up to 4 business food and beverage establishments, which I believe at this time is getting to the ratio that would be appropriate for the businesses we have in our business district. And that's all I have to say, unless there's questions. Trustee Bachhorst.
So I appreciate the bid board members being here and everyone else, and I'm sorry that this meeting is going so late. I guess we have an hour remaining. I do want to also kind of dovetail on some of the comments regarding the decision-making process, and I understand, President Roslick, that you do have the power to do certain things, but leadership is also doing the right thing even when you have the power to do otherwise. And a lot of us last year, we have the exact same board as we did last year. And a lot of us did give a lot of leeway to the process, although I do remember almost an identical discussion last year around the bid appointees, which the bid board at the time came up with a slate, and you, President Roslick, had a different slate of appointees, and those are the ones that were trumped. And I did not agree with that process. Many of us did not agree with that process, and we've had a full year to evaluate that and to have you work with the bid board to come up with a solution that pleases everyone. Perhaps I'm mistaken, I'm not sure if that process actually was underwent, or if the discussion, or if the people that who are presenting are being chosen. And I understand that there's also, we all seem to have sometimes, I'd say, different realities on what is needed, so I hear one thing from you, President Rozek, that we need X amount of people from the food and beverage industry, this and that. Then I'm also seeing and recommendations from our bid director, our bid board, who are actually on the bid and the ones doing the work, making different recommendations. And these are incongruent. And so there is that brings up a lot of questions as a trustee and probably members of the community as well. So we have a bid board, we have a bid director, yet we also, our village president is not listening to those recommendations from this organization. Why is that? If there is a reason that that is happening, that is a discussion that we probably should have. I also want to say that regarding the appointments, and also the perception of things like cronyism and secret meetings of the JP&L, sure, these are publicly, we are in the public trust. We are elected to be here to represent the voters. And when we are making decisions in small groups, subsections during the day when people are working, et cetera, that just does not allow for transparency, does not allow for legal discussion on how the process should play out, because we are not allowed to talk about these things unless they're agendized as a full board. So if just a small fraction of our population of elected officials are meeting secretly in a private room discussion to discuss a larger.
It wasn't a secret meeting, but there was a JP&L, I'm sorry, point of order here, just to clarify, JP&L met as a.
I'm not asking for a point, I'm still talking. So you can address at the end when
I'd like to call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is there no motion? There was a motion on the floor.
There was a motion on the floor.
Okay,
From President Rozak.
thank you.
Yep, to approve the slate of candidates as presented with removing David Price, Dusty,
It's there. Aren't you going to talk to them?
and Gene Weber.
But calling the question just means we cut off discussion. That's the motion on the floor. We'd like to call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion fails 5-2. Any other, trustee Carpenter? Trustee Carpenter.
I would just like to hear from the residents that are
Okay.
here.
Is there any resident that would like to speak on this matter?
There you go.
Committee 4101 North Prospect. If the president nominates somebody to a board or a commission, and the village board withholds the appointment,
Doesn't approve it.
does not approve it,
Okay.
does the person who is in that position now that the president may wish to be rid of continue to serve? Or does the village president have the power to get someone off the board when their term is up?
The individual will continue to serve.
Based on our policy.
And can the
Or
board,
resolution, right? Based on our.
Based on resolution and state law.
can the board put someone on a board or commission that the village president has not nominated?
No, well, not with respect to any appointment where it says it is to be appointed by the village president, but subject to approval by the board. If that is the language, and again, I didn't write this language, this is what's in the ordinances, it's black and white, that's just.
The answer is no. The president needs to nominate.
So by withholding,
So by withholding, the current board members will continue if they choose to do so, if the commissioners, committee members, until the president then brings another nomination in front of this board.
unless the person is an incumbent who the village president wants to be rid of, and then they stay because the board chooses. That
Correct.
gets the board, okay, so that should be addressed,
No,
I think, as well.
they serve until replaced, so you can bring forth another nominee
That's what I said,
until
yes.
replaced. They
But
don't
it-
serve
but
another
until you
whole
confirm
term.
them.
Right,
Until
you
you
gotta
confirm.
bring someone who can confirm.
Correct. Ms. Pollock?
I just want to make a statement that years ago.
Excuse me, you have to give your name and.
Oh, thank you for reminding me.
I just thought
That's
of
so
you.
nice of you. Donna Pollock, 4395 North Alpine Avenue. I just want to make a statement regarding appointments, committees, commissions. And for many, many years, it was always the same people that served. And it was very difficult for people to be on these committees. And then, you know, we started, finally we got applications, I believe. Wasn't it you, trustee Amenta, that finally organized the application process and changed the applications? So they
The
were
JP
more-
now.
Was that
Yeah,
JP&L?
It was JP&L, correct.
Right, but you were on.
No,
it wasn't all of us.
Or was it you?
It was the JP&L committee.
But they finally got applications that were.
Okay, she wasn't asking a question, please let her finish.
There were applications that were more reflective of, you know, not you work and play well with others.
Okay.
It was about why you wanted to be on and what your qualifications were. And so for many years, there was an opportunity for residents to be on. And now, as Sarah has just, the clerk reflected, that there's a lot of applicants out there. And everybody should have an opportunity. And if I've served on, for example, the Conservation Committee and my time is up, doesn't mean that I still can't volunteer. I can still go and work in the Fish and Feather Festival. I can do whatever I need to do in this community. But everybody should have an opportunity. And there's a lot of new people in this community that really want to serve. I also feel that, you know, when President Johnson ran this board, some of the trustees never, ever crossed the line in talking. I mean, I'm just shocked by the tone of some of these trustees, really. And so, all I'm asking is that you have some respect for each other. And in addition to that, when Trustee Johnson appointed people, just like that, or promised appointments, and then didn't follow through, and I can think of one trustee that, she's a trustee now, but was promised an appointment and didn't get it. I think you know, we need to move on from all of this. And thank you for listening to me, and I hope that we finally get this moving. Because when anybody complains about these meetings going long, somebody needs to look at this film from tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock. Any other residents that would like to speak at this time? Ms. Ekman.
Ellen Ackerman, 2500 East Fairway. Oh, I'm sorry.
Continue on, please.
2500 East Fairway Road. I think the comments I made earlier are reflected in the conversation. I do want to correct the record that when I was on JPNL, we had an application process. And we were just becoming more used to using technology for those, but we did update them and we did look at them. This confusion that seems to be present is also partial. There were always turnovers in committees. Many times committees were asked, was there a specific need they had? And that was valued. And if a committee, JP&L committee would say, okay, so-and-so's replacements are coming forward, then what do the committees need? And what are they looking for? I would also caution you in this discussion that committees will have no ability to function if their membership is constantly rotating. And I know that those of you who have chaired some of these committees know it takes a long time to get, even purchasing furniture, equipment for the top of that water. Went through many cycles before we were able to push that forward. So it took, I would say, 2 years to determine that. So I caution you, and that is exactly why I said that earlier, that the history is easy to trace because one could ask people from the past, who had a JP&L, what kinds of things did you do? I believe we've often had a very, very large number of applicants. It speaks to the community. If the applicants knew what might be said about them or of them, or if the committee structures were changing so much, they may feel differently about volunteering. So we need to make the committees valuable, you need to find out what do you want these committees to do.
Thank you. And I would like to, this was brought up earlier, we weren't able to respond to the residents, and since it is agendized, I would like to say that consistent with last year, the clerk, as she's new, we developed templates to thank all existing committee members that had served 2 terms and were being nominated for replacement for their service. Those letters, unfortunately, are on her desk for me to sign. They were not available to me to sign before today. So they will be forthcoming, and I apologize that, I don't know, but that's the time that it took the clerk to get them together. And also, the committee chairs for all committees, all of our committees, our volunteer committees, were all consulted by our staff, the staff liaisons, and they reached out, they asked if they thought people should be reappointed, were they in good standing. They reached out, our staff reached out and asked if there was an opening, because 2 terms had been served, or there was a vacancy, who they would, if there's anyone in particular they'd like to see. And that information was given back to myself as the appointing authority, also shared with the JP&L chair, who then shared that at JP&L committee when they discussed applications. The JP&L committee then didn't even feel comfortable without going back to the committee chairs and saying, here's the 4 we find qualified, and what would you of these 4 recommend for appointment? And whatever they recommended, the JP&L chair recommended to me, and they are on the roster today. So I just want to let you know that is the process that was used.
That did not happen with the.
Okay.
That did not happen with my committee.
Okay. And also that an email was sent from Mr. Burkhart to Ms. Ekman, letting her know her term was served. Thank you. Any other questions?
Eric Lane, the director. I'm speaking on behalf of the bid board, of course, and I'm going to keep this very short. I just want to first confirm that everyone has received the 2 memos from President Michael Ryan from April and May. The discussions that the bid board has had on recommendations and a process that we followed on behalf of requested by the village president last year. So just the nuts and bolts of what this is about right now is the 6 replaced vacancies. You know that the board is not in agreement with moving people before their terms are completed. So that's why we're using back to wish to stay on and complete their terms, but they're the resolution. So, okay.
2006 was the original appointment.
Yeah. But yeah, we're using some very legacy people on the board, and we have very new board right now too. So the point I want to get to is the 6 that are on the table here. We have 265 businesses. 33 of those businesses are food and beverage. That includes not just bars and restaurants, that's everything. And so when the bid board in April and May discussed, what would be a good balance for the categories and types of businesses, they took that very seriously. We had outreach committee. And we knew Rachel Carter from Northwoods was resigning for personal reasons, and so one of the owners, Rick Fassenbecker, stepped in and said yes, because as Trustee Macher said, they're one of our largest employees in the village, and it's IT, they're only IT business. Now, as far as, I know what you're saying about food and beverage, and I get your reasoning, I really do, but I have to question that business because of the portion in total of the 260 businesses when you look at the categories. So that's a much heavier portion to the 33 that we have. And also we need new blood. David Price has already served on the board before the bid board.
You mean his business?
Yeah, he has served on the bid board for 1 term. And so that's why we looked at Nat DeBauer would be good because he's so involved as well. And I'm concerned about the 3 that are being you want to appoint because they're right in one block of each other. So if you feel that it should be food and beverage more heavy on our board, which we are disagreeing with obviously, then I ask that you step back and say, let's look at other food and beverages elsewhere in the
I
village.
did, I apologize to that. I think I've shared with you. By the way, we've met a couple of times, and then the last meeting that was to share the nominations by the bid was canceled by Mr. Arthur. But,
No, please, I want that to be struck from
Okay,
that,
continue on.
that's not incorrect at all.
okay, so I did reach out to the Culver's owner for 2 years in a row now, and even on the bid board, I remember Jim saying that that would be a great fit.
So that was then, but this is now.
I'm just saying, for the last 2 years, this year I reached out as well. I just wanted to share that
It's
I
like-
have looked at, I've been reaching out for other businesses
You,
that are.
it just, you have
Because you
not worked with
specified
the
it.
bid board to.
I was ready for the meeting and it was canceled.
There was no meeting. I'm sorry.
Okay, continue on.
No, I know you said you reached out.
Was there
with
not a
past-
meeting,
with
Rebecca?
Past actions.
Rebecca.
It's not this current process.
So there was a meeting with
I met twice.
the bid district, I want to say March,
Yep, yes,
and that resulted in the first
March
memorandum.
19th.
Great, keep going.
Thank you for the bid district, and that meeting, at that time, consisted of myself, and the village president, and Clark Brockman, and Director Lang, and
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown, who's the president.
Yeah.
Let her finish, please.
And that meeting resulted in the first memo from the bid district with regards to our recommendations and appointments. Is it?
Then we have another one. And then there was one scheduled, and I was not able to attend your meeting, and so we had a phone conversation scheduled. And you sent a notice, and Arthur sent a notice that you would not be attending for conflict, but is that
Can I
correct?
speak now?
Is that correct?
Oh my gosh. That's not a yes or no answer, because after our April meeting, when we made our recommendations, some bid members were not happy about it, and there was some inappropriate discussions going on and pseudo threats,
From?
and
Please don't say me. Because
that we decided it not be in our best interest to have a meeting at that time,
So it's
because
canceled.
decisions were, yes, it was canceled,
Okay,
because
thank
there
you.
was no purpose.
thank you for that. Trustee Moore.
After Director Lang is done, can we have a bio for him prior to any motion that we need to?
Yeah.
But please, we want
So,
to be
wait,
legit.
just to finish what we're just asking, that it's very important to have someone from Northwoods on our bid board. That's my big thing right now, on behalf of the bid board.
Thank you. Any other resident that would like to speak on this matter? If not, we will take a bio break at this time, and we will return at 10:10.
I'm here now. I'm still here.